Hi, my name's Lee Makovichuk, and I'm one of the researchers who worked on this flight engagement model. Back in 2019, we wondered how educators and leaders used flight to guide their practices. Some of those individuals had been using ideas from flight for several years, and others had been using flight for just a short time. We asked them to tell us how they began to learn about and use the flight framework, and they were very generous with their insights. After, we used their insights to develop a visual for what it looks like to engage with flight language, concepts, and goals. We considered a natural metaphor to align with the notion of taking flight. Alberta birds are found in both rural and urban areas and across all the seasons. A great horned owl is the Alberta bird chosen by Alberta children and is the logo for the flight framework. We use the bird metaphor to represent ideas of diversity, relationality, and community. The engagement model illustrates 4 stances, 4 positions in which educators and leaders see and act. These stances are nesting, fledgling, practicing, and soaring, as represented with eggs in a nest, young birds learning to fly, flying close to what is familiar, and flying more broadly, stretching oneself in new ways. We engaged the Flight Practice Advisory Council, a group of about 30 educators and leaders who work in the ELCC sector in Alberta. Wanting to learn more about the ideas that the first group of educators and leaders revealed to us about their experiences using the flight framework, we asked the council to talk with us about how each of these stances feel like and look like in practice, and the conditions that create movement among the stances. We also engaged flight course instructors and facilitators who told us that the stances are always grounded in values and a vision as illustrated in the tree with roots in the flight document. We also engaged flight course learners about the model. They told us that educators can be in several stances at the same time, and that movement among the stances is not linear, like steps going in one direction. Rather, the stances that educators and leaders position themselves depend on the ideas that they're exploring, the people that they're connecting with, and moving in many directions, forward, backwards, up, down, and circling by building one's experiences or building on one's experiences. In the next slides, I will talk about each of the stances and the conditions that support movement for educators. The 4 stances illustrated on this slide are interwoven, often spiraling and nonlinear in that they are not hierarchical or one-directional. And we may return to nesting at different times, for example, as a way of preparing for what is to come. The many educators who contributed their ideas, experiences, and questions told us that each time they cycle back, they are not the same person. They have different ideas and think about things in evolving ways that reflect how they live, learn, and engage with others. So, though it may seem that someone continues to return to a nesting stance, for example, they nest differently than before because of the different ways of thinking they have gained and nurtured since being in that stance previously. Educators and leaders described a flight journey is filled with stops, starts, pauses, and jumps, much like life. Nesting. Nesting is a safe place to observe others. It can feel like new ideas are the same as past ideas as they come around again, or it can also offer educators a sense of feeling secure with the way things are and not wanting to change. It can also be considered a time of preparation while one watches others and thinks about what they see and its meaning for them. Maybe observing others to see what might happen or not happen. Nesting offers a sense of safeness preparation, or watching others while ideas simmer, and as a place of ongoing reflection. Multiple starting points happen within nesting: the image of the child, well-being goal, dispositions to learn, to name a few places people have begun with. Some emotional responses may also be experienced as educators are introduced to new ideas. Emotions may look like resistance, excitement, caution, and curiosity. For example, when nesting, questions arise about how do I do it? And can I do it? And what is this about anyways? Practicing. Practicing is about finding one's pathway and feeling something new is becoming more familiar. It also involves appreciating the excitement of the unexpected when trying new ideas and ways of being. Flight is beginning to take shape within the program, and a culture of questioning is emerging. There is an acknowledgement that the questions come from within, such as, what questions can we ask to support one another to go deeper, to think more deeply? In practicing, there may be a feeling of, we're all in this together, supporting, helping, guiding, questioning. The starting points are multiple and involve time and reflection. Time to explore and reflecting on the questions we ask, to co-research with others. Fledgling. Like nesting, a fledgling stance feels like one is confronted with new words and ideas and feels unsure, maybe even tentative about trying something new. It can feel as though what was known is constantly moving and changing from moment to moment. It can also feel like wanting to try something new, but needing help figuring out what to do or do next. Many people have begun to realize that flight is an individual and collective journey in this stance of fledgling. In fledgling, the multiple beginnings provoke a teetering back and forth between I got this and I need to learn more. The questions arising in this stance seek further learning. Questions like, what is multimodal literacy? What is Dizzy Play? What does flight mean for our work in our local community? Soaring. Soaring feels like excitement by what is taking place and promotes a willingness to take risks in the spirit of learning, growing, and imagining new possibilities. Soaring is about sharing ideas and inviting new ideas and other ways of thinking. Here, in Soaring, educators genuinely embrace the notion that educators, children, and families participate, contribute, and collaborate in many ways. In Soaring, questions open spaces for aligning practices. Questions may take us to unknown places. Questions like, what if? What would happen? Could we? Soaring requires supporting others and being supported with recognition that movement is back and forth between what we do and how we think about what we do and why. Still, there is confidence in soaring and comfort in sharing stories in one's journey. The Flight Practice Advisory Council provided us with descriptive words for what the stances look like and feel like in practice. And again, I want to remind you that these stances are not like steps moving educators from point A to point Z. The movement for educators is organic, like the flight course learners described, moving forward and backward, up and down and across, cycling in non-linear ways. Also, educators may see themselves in multiple stances, depending on the ideas and practices they're exploring in a particular moment. So nesting is described as a foundation, anticipation, comfort, teamwork, instinctual, researching, growth, preparing, and questioning. Fledgling is described as uncertain, curiosity, reflecting, confidence, possibilities, small steps, wondering, testing ideas, and taking risks in the spirit of co-learning. Practicing is described as taking ownership, finding one's voice, momentum, collaboration, willingness, leading, braveness, and creativity. And soaring is described as ongoing learning, embracing, mentorship, meaning making, authenticity, belonging, leadership, transformation, and advocacy. Engagement with flight is about movement, although it's not a race and there is no set endpoint, nor is there a particular right direction. Rather, the movement that happens depends on educators' engagement with ideas and others to make meaning of their relational practices with children and other educators and leaders. Movement happens within daily living of engaged early childhood communities. When we shared the flight engagement model with the Flight Practice Advisory Council, we asked them to talk to us about the conditions that influences movement in the model, and they had lots to tell us. The council told us that there are reciprocal influences between educator education and program level supports for educators to continue learning and making meaning of their relational practices, and that using flight is about a generative space for co-learning that creates growth for evolving daily practices and ways of being within community. One of my colleagues describes it like the layers of an onion. And as each layer is lifted, the layers within are revealed again and again. Flight is a process of lifelong learning within community that shifts and evolves with each new family and each new colleague. We see the reciprocal influences represented in the outer arrows that demonstrate the social conditions for time, space, materials, and participation that surround educators in their daily work with children and families. Some of the programs using flight in the sector talk about this as parallel practice, meaning that the kinds of responsive environments that we create for young children, we also need responsive environments for educators that allow them time for learning, the space for ideas to percolate and cultivate, the materials for learning to be there. For instance, ways of sharing ideas and representing ideas and exploring them using multimodal literacies. And that very important participation of community members who seek also to engage in the learning that's unfolding. Still, as educators engage with questioning and multiple perspectives and co-constructing knowledge with others, movement occurs with their use of flight in their daily work. These conditions take time, and it's not one and done approach. Rather, time involves time with children and families and time to make meaning of practices as they evolve with each family. These interrelated conditions make up the inner cycle that also influences the outer cycle in dynamic ways. We presented this engagement model to you to consider where you are today, where you come from, and perhaps what are you thinking about, where you're going to go, and the conditions that support you. So perhaps you've had a moment of pause and reflection on the conditions that support you. But here you are at a moment in your flight journey, and still there's more to learn, always more to understand about the relational work that you do with each child and each family. The following questions are offered to you in a moment of pause and reflection. What do you appreciate that you've learned so far? What do you still wonder about? Where do you see yourself today? And who do you engage with to continue that learning journey? What do you hope to have in place a year from now? And how can you support professional conversations with other educators? Think about who you seek out to explore emerging ideas. Is it a team member, a leader that you work with, or is it the children and families? Using flight is about participating with others that offer you new and different ideas to inspire you to think about what you do and why you do it. Users of the flight framework tell us that it is a lifelong journey of co-learning through researching and imagining possibilities along with children, families, and other community members. Co is an essential idea in the flight framework. Being in co, meaning being in relationship with others, is a productive space where ideas percolate, bump up against prior knowledge, and move thinking in new directions. We learned about the significance of co early in the research and development of the flight document, when the first advisory committee inspired the idea, a place of vitality, which describes healthy communities where people exist in relationships that encourage growth, creativity, innovation, problem solving, and progress as people come together and pool their individual perspectives, wisdom, strengths, and skills. So as you continue in your flight journey, please know that you're not alone, and do seek out others to support you along your way. As one flight course learner said, reflective thinking is crucial in our work with children, and a goal of mine moving forward is to help facilitate reflective discussions with team members and teaching partners, how we can internally self-reflect and reflect with our team members and the families we serve. This starts with making time for educators and team members to come together and reflect. As a leader, I want to work at making space for this to happen amongst team members while modeling what this can look like. It will also require equipping everyone with the materials to reflect and the questions that can further support and enhance our learning and work with the children. That course learner took the course in the wintertime in 2021. The flight framework is about communities of practicing educators who energize one another to think about and talk about what they do that matters and why. Thank you for listening. And we extend our sincere appreciation to the Alberta educators, leaders, flight instructors and facilitators, Flight Practice Advisory Council, and flight course learners who provided their insights and experiences for the development of this engagement model. We hope this engagement model helps you to see that where you are is where you need to be, and that this learning journey is not about an endpoint, but about the process in itself. Have a wonderful day.